Hello, this is Chad McDonald again, and I'm here to do lab number one. And what we're talking about today for this content management class is building a Shopify store. And to start with, you have to choose a brand. You have to choose what kind of business that you're going to be in. What are you going to sell? What is your brand all about? What are those things that make your brand really special and stand out? And so today we're going to talk a little bit about some brands. We're going to look at some brands that are iconic, and then also maybe just some brands that are, kind of local and unique. And then what we'll do is we'll talk about what we need to do in the class to create this product and the brand, your storefront, and all of that kind of stuff. So let's start off with a very iconic brand, and most people know it. It's Nike, and one of the greatest brand stories that has ever been told is the "Just Do It" story. And so a lot of people make a joke about it, and the branding department came in to the Nike boardroom, and they said, we need a new slogan. And the Nike guys said, well, what are we supposed to do? What do you mean a new slogan? And the person just looked at him and said, just do it. And so that was how Just Do It happened. Actually, that's not true, but definitely look it up and and find out what made Just Do It, three little words, one of the biggest brand exposures in the world and one of the most recognized brands in the world. But when we talk about like building your brand, you have to start off with a few things like the why. What are we selling? What are we about? What's our brand positioning? Who's our target audience and the personas about them? And Nike did a really great job with that as far as the Just Do It campaign. And many of you also have maybe seen Air, the movie about Nike and Michael Jordan, another great branding, Air Jordan, another great branding experience that really defined Nike. That was just a running shoe brand, and then branched out into many different brands. Uh, and so Nike's one of the ones that take a look at. Some of you also may know like REI. REI started off just selling other brands, right? So it's an e-commerce store selling outdoor brands. And what they did is they brought outdoor brands to the market because they saw was that many of the really highly technical outdoor brands of clothing and equipment and things like that couldn't be purchased uh, at your regular department stores and your sporting goods stores. And so what they did is they created this environment that was, outdoor first and high quality and really getting out into nature. And so like camp, hike, that type of thing really is what REI started with. And one of the things that it represents is represents the outdoors. It represents a cross section of high quality brands that are sold to consumers. Now REI actually makes products, or they have them made by somebody else, but they have their own branded products. But in the beginning, they didn't. And they just sold other products, and that's okay. They had to still establish their brand, the why. What was the problem that they were fixing? What was the solution that they were providing? What type of target persona, the person who was outdoor oriented but maybe couldn't find those products at their local department store? And then what kind of competitive analysis maybe did they do to find out what was important and what they could differentiate themselves? And lastly is a mission statement. What was their mission to provide to the consumer? And that's all part of this beginning brand. Another really iconic brand in e-commerce especially is Williams Sonoma. So Williams Sonoma started off as a kitchen store for really high quality kitchen ware. So between kitchen appliances and cutlery, all of the different stuff that was really about kitchen. And it became bigger and bigger. And so now it's got housewares and all sorts of different products that they provide to consumers. But again, they didn't start off making their own Williams Sonoma products. They were simply providing those products to consumers that couldn't find them elsewhere. And somewhere down the road, they got into making or having products made for them. And again, this is that B2B going B2C. B2B means business to business, and B2C means business to consumer. And so, well, Nike has always been business to consumer, right? They make consumer products and they sell them. Originally, they were B2B. They were making a product, they were selling it to a retailer, and then that retailer would sell it to the consumer. Because of e-commerce and the ability for brands to now sell direct or D2C, direct to consumer, we often are seeing these iconic brands not only kind of skipping over the retailer and selling it directly to the consumer. So you're going to need to think about that as you're building your brand for this project on lab number one. Is, am I going to be a retailer that sells products to consumers? Just I buy them, I re-merchandise them, and I sell them? Or is it something that I'm making up, a new product line or a new product that I'm having made by a manufacturer, or maybe I make it myself? So some things to think about. Here's a direct-to-consumer brand that I've worked with at Brandography. It's called Trika, and they're based in Wisconsin. I'm going to show you a couple Wisconsin brands here, and they make fishing rods and reels, and they sell them direct to consumer. So you're not going to find these rods in your local sporting goods store. Actually, I think you will this summer, because I think they're going to be putting them into retail this summer. But they started off by selling them direct to consumer and shipping them directly. A great brand, and we're going to go and look at their brand guide, and that's what you'll be putting together for this lab. Trika is a great example of really excellent branding for a brand new product. Another one, Badger State Brewing in Green Bay, Wisconsin. These guys, it's a brewing company, but they have their own tap room. They have a lot of events. They sell beer all over the state, but they're not national, right? They're just, they're a local company, and they still need a brand guide so that when they produce their products, they have an online presence. They're producing promotions, advertising on social media. They need to know what kind of brand message they're sending. So things like their logo, their fonts, their colors, the style, the voice, and everything that goes with it is used to build their websites. And so Badger State Brewing, another client of ours, a great little brand here in Wisconsin that does a wonderful job of promoting events, their beer, and other things directly to consumers. And so, this is a direct to consumer, a B2C environment that was very successful up in Green Bay. So last one, another Wisconsin company, Trek Bikes, and they are, they're a worldwide company. They sponsor teams that race in the Tour de France, and they sponsor mountain bike racing. They sponsor all sorts of things, and they sell them through retailers, but also direct to consumer these days. And so here's another iconic brand. And what does it mean, and what is their brand messaging? And if we were to look back in time, if you go to the Wayback Machine on the internet, you can go back and look at these brands and see how they've evolved over time. Just because you set your brand up today doesn't mean that it's not going to evolve. Caribou Coffee is a really good example too, as the Caribou has even evolved their logo. But Trek is a great brand to study too, because they started off with just basic bicycles, and they've grown and grown and grown, expanded into all sorts of different areas. In fact, they have Trek Travel, which is a travel service. They've got Bontrager's, their parts and components company, and they do everything from electric bikes to mountain bikes to road bikes. So Another great example here is Trek. Go ahead and take a look at these examples. Everything from Nike, REI, Williams Sonoma, our local smaller companies, Trika, Badger State Brewing, and Trek. When you're looking at the brand that you want to create, emulate some of the things that they're doing. So to start off with, though, is you're going to need to pick out what kind of company that you want to be. What is your brand name? And what do you want to sell? So again, do you want to be like a manufacturer direct, such as Trika? Do you want to be a company that sells products that you source from around the world, like Williams Sonoma or REI? You got to figure that out. So the easiest way to start off is asking yourself, why? Like, what am I doing? What problem am I trying to solve for the consumer? What is my target persona? And I'll give you guys all this information too as we go through this. But I'll just put it over here and make it a little bigger. It's the why is like, what are we trying to what problem are we trying to solve? What's our persona? Who are we selling this to? Who's that person? What age group? What is what do they do? What do they like? Because if I just try and sell something to everybody, I really am not going to please anybody because it's too wide, right? So competitive analysis. Who are the direct competitors? Take a look. Try and find other companies that are selling this product or this brand of product that you're selling. And then what's the gap? What are they missing? What aren't they selling? So in Trika's experience, when they were trying to solve the gap, they were looking at a more responsive carbon fiber fishing rod. So they wanted one that you could feel the fish bite even better than the competitors. So they're trying to solve a gap there. They were also trying to do was lower the price from the very extreme, very sensitive rods that are very high priced, go direct to consumer and sell them at a lower price. So they were trying to figure out how to do it better, more sensitive, and at a lower price. Finding that gap, and they were very successful at it. We actually got them on Amazon. We sold a ton of fishing rods on Amazon. It was crazy. And then, what's your mission statement? What's that one thing that's the North Star of your business? So, with Nike, just do it. REI, camp, hike, outdoors. It's the mission statement that they have that really sets them apart, right? And when you go to your branding, you're going to be able to see, like, does my mission statement that I started off with, is it reflected in my branding? So if I wanted a really wild brand, something that's really out there, and I want to promote EDM concerts or something like that, yeah, that's going to be a different brand than camp, hike, outdoors, right? And so, does my mission and my colors and my brand statement, do they all reflect what's going on in my business? Next is your naming. And these, 40 years ago, nobody went, hey, when I name my company, I got to make sure that I can get my URL, because it didn't exist 40 years ago. The URL didn't exist. So, but today, naming and domain strategy are kind of like hand in hand. You can't name your business something if that domain name is taken and used for something else, because obviously, if we're going to be e-commerce, we got to sell online. We have to have an online presence. So, what is the name? Is it descriptive? Dollar Shave Club. Great commercial, by the way. Go watch that one on YouTube if you've never seen it. The original Dollar Shave Club commercial. Evocative. Does it make you think of something like Patagonia? When you think of Patagonia, you think high mountains, outdoors, cold. So Patagonia is a great example of an outdoor name. And is it inventive? Shopify, which we'll be working with, is Shopify. And so shop is online, it's shopping, it's going out there, Shopify. So Shopify your brand, right? So Shopify your store. So if you're currently have a retail store, let's Shopify it. Let's put it online. Does it pass the radio test? Here's another really great example is if I was to tell you the brand today and you could then go and look it up. So, if I told you, hey, go down to the Piggly Wiggly, you might not know what the Piggly Wiggly is, but you probably remember that I told you about it. Piggly Wiggly is a grocery store brand, and it's not groceries, and Piggly Wiggly doesn't really sound like they have anything to do with each other, but it's definitely a brand name you could remember. So it doesn't pass the radio test or the phone or spoken in a reel test. By the way, if you're going to promote your brand with influencers, they have to be able to say the name, pronounce the name, and then actually get that image across in somebody's brain so that they could go and look it up later. Because a lot of influencers are just talking about or showing products, but they're not giving great links because I'm not on social media to go shopping right now. I'm there for entertainment or to view something. So that's a really great test, is the radio test. And then the availability check. Obviously, go and look it up. And part of this project will be to pick your brand name, but also to make sure that you can pick a URL. Now, you might say, well, Nike.it is available. Yeah, but that's not going to get you anywhere, and plus it'd probably be a brand infringement. So I don't think you can say, well, I'm going to be Nike, I'm also going to sell shoes, but I'm going to use Nike.it. So can't do stuff like that. So make sure when you're looking up your brand name that you're also looking up the URL and if it's available as a .com. So for this exercise, we're going to make sure that every brand name that you choose is available as a .com. All right. Let's move on to visual psychology and color theory. And so one of the crazy things about your website is it's got to have some color and spice, and the colors you choose really do represent your brand. Again, the REI colors are different than the Trek colors. And you can differentiate a little bit there. You can say oh yeah, REI is more of the tans and it's got some browns and it's outdoors. It feels outdoors. And Trek is really black and red. It's very striking colors. And there's a differentiator there, right? When I go to one website, I can tell that I'm there. When I go to another website, I can tell that I'm there. I don't confuse the brands. And also the brand color should evoke some sort of image in my head, right? So if I'm outdoors, tans and dark greens and browns and things like that and oranges, they really represent the outdoors. Whereas something maybe neon and definitely like some wild colors might, represent something more like Mr. Beast and his brand. So different colors, different brands. Make sure that when you're looking for your brand colors, that you're choosing something that goes along with the feeling that you're trying to establish for the persona, the people that you're trying to sell to. So if it's bright and crazy and it's blinky, you're probably not going to attract, a geriatric crowd, right? They're, somebody that's in the 60s, late 60s, 70s, 80s crowd. That's not their color scheme usually. And so make sure you're thinking about the color scheme for the products that you're selling. Green, for example, is organic and eco-friendly. Black and gold is kind of considered luxury and exclusive. And if we look at this and we go to housewares here, go to Williams-Sonoma, if you look at black and gold, right? There's very dark on with gold appliances, gold accent appliances. And this is their current homepage, black and gold. Again, that is exactly what luxury and exclusivity is trying to convey, that through the color and emotion. If you're looking through the colors, there's a couple things to consider. is one is the 60-30-10 rule. So usually 60% your base color needs to be a light color for backgrounds. Usually white, off-white, something very light. And if we look at these sites like Nike, they're using a light colored header here, a light color in the drop down as the background. Now these are images, but they're on a light background. Now, one of the things that uh, I will, suggest as we go through creating your brand and your homepage is that you use great imagery on your homepage because it really attracts the customer's eye. But if you put it all on a bright blue background, you better have a good reason for that, or a neon green background. You probably need a good reason why it's on that background. So usually the 60% your base is off white, gray, white, something like that. 30% is your second is your main color. These are your buttons, your headers, and they can be different colors, but they're your brand color. Now, buttons, interestingly enough, a lot of folks might use just red buttons, even though red is not their brand color. Others want to use their brand color. So if we look at REI, their brand color is dark green, and they use them as the buttons, as you can see here, and they're on a nice tan background. But they also have some white text on green, and as you scroll down here, you're going to see that they're using kind of a tan background to kind of make the products pop and also enclose them in a box. So definitely you can see some coloration here. And then they're using a splashes of different color within their ads. And this is completely okay. You just have to make sure that you're staying within your brand guidelines. So like they are using a teal color here as an accent color for this advertisement, 40% off. All right. And then 10% is your accent color. They could be your add to cart buttons, or that teal that we just saw used in REI is an accent color. One thing that is more and more important these days is accessibility. And one of the reasons that it's so important is because it is a legal issue. In fact, you could have lawyers knocking on your door if you're brand is using colors and styles and web design that isn't accessible for those people with disabilities. And so we're just going to do this on the light side. We're going to talk about contrast, especially since today's lab is all about building your brand, is contrast. And so we want to make sure that we have contrast ratios of 3-1 or 4.5-1 with your text and your componentry. What does that kind of mean? So, let's look back here at REI. And this text right here is probably this might even be not compliant. It might be just compliant because it's a gray text on a tan background. And so the contrast here isn't all that great. Now, if we look up here, this contrast is excellent, right? Because it is black with white text. So this is going to be, extreme contrast. If we look over here, this is good contrast because this teal color on this tan background does stand out enough. There are contrast checking tools out there, and we'll put a link to them in the documentation that we send out, and you can check your contrast between colors. And so definitely something to think about as you're doing your color picking. If your text color and your primary color and background colors are too close together, you will end up with accessibility issues for contrast. So while there's a lot more accessibility conversation, we're gonna focus on contrast for your brand. Next is typography and readability. So you want to make sure that your fonts are representative of your brand. You also want to make sure that they're readable, right? So if we look at these different brands, you can see that their fonts that they use are in line with their branding. So, with Nike, it's just no serif or sans serif fonts, and they use different ones. So like for down here, this is just your basic font, but then this is a bold all caps, and it's kerned very tight. It's an accent font for like a headline. But I think if we go back up here, yep, and it's also used across here. So you can see that this is their accent font that they're using. It's representing their brand. REI actually using a serif font on some of their, yep, serif font on their H1 here. But then when you go over here to your headline, you can see that it's still very, very readable. Their body text is sans serif. So they're using a serif font for their headline, but sans serif for their body text. Serif font for Williams-Sonoma. As you can see, Williams-Sonoma in their brand is a serif font. So that aligns with their headline here. But their menus and their body text are all made sans serif fonts. So it's very readable, easy to read. One of the things you have to consider is your audience too. Does your audience wear reading glasses? If they do, you might want to use a bigger, clearer font. If your audience is maybe younger and more like I use Mr. Beast again, more crazy and out there, you can get away with using a lot of different fonts because their business is not necessarily all about keeping that brand on brand. As far as like their fonts, what they were trying to do is shock people and have and entertain people. So your fonts could be a little bit different. So it depends on your business there. Make sure that you're scaling all your fonts correctly. So you give an H1, H2, H3, and then a paragraph or body font. So what we'll have you do is we're in creating these is establish the fonts that you like that fit with your brand and establish some sizing and bolding and make sure that they're readable. Also make sure that they are web safe fonts. So they should be Google fonts or Shopify fonts. In this exercise, because we want to make a Shopify store, I'll have a link to Shopify fonts available with your Horizon theme. Please pick one of those fonts because that's the font that we'll be using, and then you don't have to install Google Fonts on your system, which would be an additional work and step that we just don't need to do for this class. Now let's move on to the logos, right? So your logo should be something that you enjoy. It represents your brand. People can recognize it. They can recognize it big. They can recognize it small. Logos are, really the encapsulation of your brand and putting it out there. So the swoosh for Nike, very recognizable. The prime symbol for Amazon, very recognizable. Apple, very recognizable, right? So some of those are very recognizable. If we go to Trika, their logo is their name with their triangle inset into it. And as we'll show you in the brand guide here, when we get into it, you'll see the different variations of it. So we need a primary logo. And so these are the full website header logos. And this is what you use normally on most things. A stacked or secondary logo, these are squares. So think of your logo positioning as you have horizontal logos and you have a square need. So things that fit into certain internet visuals. And sometimes a wide logo won't fit. Think of apps, think of mobile, wide doesn't necessarily fit. Maybe you want something square or stacked. And then you need a favicon. So the favicons are these little logos that are up in the header here. And some of them are better than others. I think Trika's is very readable. Nike's little swoosh is pretty readable. But Badger State, I obviously can't read that, but maybe I remember what it is. Trek is just the word Trek. It's hard to see, but it is a black square with white squiggles. So I guess it's sort of readable. But anyways, everybody needs a favicon. Otherwise, you'll just end up with a circle. and we don't want that. And then a monochrome. So just a version of your logo that can be in black and white. And why do you need that? Because, all right, we're back. Apparently it times out after 30 minutes, and we're just at 30 minutes. So we'll finish this up and I'll show you the brand guides and get you on your way here very shortly. But back to logos, make sure that you have your logos done and they represent your brand. They're fun, exciting. You get to choose here today. I would say use AI to create a logo. Unless you're a great graphic artist, if you are, please do it. Create your logo on your own. And then last thing in here in the lab is, what is your product selection? So you're going to need to select your products. So if you're a business to consumer, direct to consumer, your products are going to be on your brand. So they're going to be your branded products. So for example, with Trica, they made their own rods. They sell them directly to consumer. So they are taking the business of rod manufacturer, selling them direct to consumers. That's very easy for them to understand, like, hey, I need to sell these things. This is what I'm selling. But if you're like Williams-Sonoma, you have to curate your collection. You're probably not going to sell kitchenware that you can get at Walmart because it's not going to be the quality and it doesn't fill that need or fill a gap. So your Walmart solves a problem for certain things. Williams-Sonoma solves a problem for other things. And you want to make sure that you're picking your product correctly. So think about that as you source your product. So is it a product that you're making or a product that you're buying and sourcing? What is your sourcing model? Are you going to, drop ship them? Are you going to make them? You're going to have to build a manufacturing facility. We're not going to go way into this today. So in this exercise, this content management system exercise that we're doing this semester, you can do it however you want, and you don't have to build it beyond that. So if you say, well, I'm going to do a drop shipping company, fine, source. Where are you going to source it? How are you going to source it? What products are you going to sell? Your brand is still the website and what you're selling. If you say, I'm going to make something up, I'm going to make something new that is exciting and to me and is something I always wanted to build, don't worry about that fact that you can't really build it right now or you don't have a manufacturing facility. Go ahead and make that product up as much as you want to. The last thing is, what's your pricing strategy? And this isn't really part of the brand exercise, but it is a little bit. What is the pricing strategy going to be for your product? Are you going to be low priced? Are you going to be luxury priced? Are you going to be kind of in the middle? Are you solving a pricing issue? Is that one of the things that you're solving with your brand? And if so, make sure that when you're doing your brand guide, that your brand fits the pricing strategy. So if you're the low price leader, that's a different branding message than if you're the luxury brand. So think about price, selection, product mix. All of that stuff goes into your brand as you're building your brand. The last thing, and it's not on this list, is think about, are you also having a brick and mortar store? So are you a brick and mortar store that's selling online, or are you what they call a pure play, which is a company that only sells online? And so think about that, because your marketing, your branding, and everything like that can be completely different if you're selling from a local retail environment. So, for example, Badger State Brewing is selling from a local environment. REI used to be, right? Like it used to be that there were REI stores, and so they had a brick and mortar environment, and that can be part of their branding too. So, think about that as you're going through this branding exercise. So, last thing, we're going to get into what you need to create for this lab, and that is the brand style guide. And I'm going to show you a couple of them here. So, here's the one for Trica. So, this is Trica's style guide, and it talks about their brand guidelines. And here's the brand introduction. What is it? What does it mean? What's the translation? Translate Trica into the fishing industry. The use of information in a series of 3 is works perfectly for our marketing strategy, so on and so forth. You can read through these will be provided for you. And so here's this brand information. You're going to need to create this out of those questions and that outline we were just looking at. Then you need to create the logo, right? So here's their primary logo, and then some secondary symbolic logos. So this is one I would say would be a stacked logo, right? So more of a square. And here's their logo that is a monochrome. So just here's how it would look in black and white. And what this does is it gives your marketing team the guidelines of what to use to stay on brand. Some other variations, and these are acceptable variations of the logo, right? So if you have a black background, you're making a sticker or something like that, and this is the way they want it. So we don't want a black background and a gray trica. We want the black background and a white trica. The color system. Here's your primary colors. Orange, and you get the color code, and they gave the PMS color and the hex color, CMKY and RJB. So you can convert all of these and a color swatch onto your document. And what that's going to do is it's going to give anyone that's producing marketing for you the ability to grab these colors and make sure that they're correct. Black and gray. So 3 colors across the board. Fonts and typography. So you're going to need to find those fonts. Make sure that you use the ABCD and 1, 2, 3, 4. Do this with the font so that it's easy to understand what it's going to look like in use on your site. They have the Trica font. So this was created out of this font. It's been modified for them. So this is the one that is, say if you can see it, you can see the R here. And you can see that the R matches their R here, but it's slightly modified. Notice how this one has the slice here with the T and the R, and over here the R has the slice in the opposite way. So this font was slightly modified to make the logo, but they use this throughout the website, non-marketing materials. They use New Academy and Montserrat as fonts on their website. Some variations. So their series, they have the 3X rod and the 6X rod. They have some tech logos, some things that they have trademarked just because that's part of their product line. And so these are additional. You don't really need to do anything with these. It's just something interesting to look at so that you can see like what people in the business are doing to make sure that their brand is properly represented. We're also going to look at Badger State Brewing here and their brand guide. So you can see theirs is very different, whereas Trica's is very clean. Badger State Brewing, this kind of gives you that gritty feel. They have a pickaxe and a shovel, and this kind of unique font, and it stands out. They really wanted something unique. So that's the brand system that they used to build their logo. And they have the little badger paw here. I kind of liked that. So, here's what their brand represents is, it's playful, masculine graphics, strong colors, clean application, personified Badger State Brewery's craftsmanship and hometown heritage, so on and so forth. So as you go through here, you're going to see also, how they want to use it, what colors they want to use, the different logos that they have. Some of these are this is a very vivid logo. Not sure I would be using this very often, but here's how it looks on leather. I think that's really cool that they did that. They put it on leather. They give you the brand folks give this to the marketing team to be like, this is what it should look like, and this is how it should be represented. Here's their colors, their fonts, secondary colors, graphic elements, so the grains, the badger head here, the badger paw, the pickaxe and shovel, some examples of how it can be used and where the cut lines need to be. And this is an interesting one. So incorrect usage guidelines. So if you look at this, they're actually giving it uh, like, don't do this guidelines. And that might be just as helpful for marketing folks and for their team, and especially for contractors. So don't squish the logo. Don't make it, always you leave it square. Don't turn the logo. Don't use the logo over top of the badger foot. Don't use white on gray. This is not a screen. Do not screen the logo. So don't screenshot or screen the logo. And other different variations, don't use a color that's not appropriate for the logo. It's not approved. Some basic color guides, like this is where you would see the colors being used with the logo. So if you have a red background, make sure you're only using these logos in these colors. And also some file guides. So here's the logos, and here they are in the files and the last page. But Badger State went a lot further than Trika in how to use the logo, what colors you can use the logo. And also it gave a lot of ideas for the backgrounds that they want to use and how they want that to be prepared. So very, very different brand guidelines. And that's why I'm giving you two of them here to look at, because they're very different. You can emulate either of them or mix and match, but definitely for your brand guidelines, this is probably the minimum that we need to do, is to have our typography, our colors, our logos and logo variations on our brand guideline. And it would be great to have a brand introduction. You notice that was on both of them, brand introduction. So as you go forward with the project here, you need to create your brand name, your URL, your logo, primary, stacked, favicon, monochrome, your hex codes for your color palette, primary and secondary. Add a third if you would like, your font names, and the type of products that you'll be selling. So that's in the assignment for today. If you have any questions, you can email Kevin, and you can message me on LinkedIn. Have a great day.